Did you know that the end of the world is right around the corner and we should probably already be preparing for it? At least that's what Hollywood would have us believe. But are they right? That is the question we have to answer. This past year of 2023, we saw a multitude of films being released that depicted the end of the world or other catastrophic events happening around the globe. Additionally, coming in the year 2024, we have another slew of films that are going to be depicting or predicting the end of the world or other catastrophic events happening globally. Is Hollywood trying to tell us something or warn us of the impending doom? Well, let's take a look back at some of the films that were released in 2023 that dealt with these types of themes. We had films such as Knock at the Cabin by the one and only M. Night Shyamalan. We also had a new Hunger Games film released, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Now, of course, you can argue whether or not a Hunger Games film is an apocalyptic type of film. However, it does depict a dystopian future in which we had a hand in creating. So I'm counting it. Additionally, there was the film Doomsday Meter, and we also had everyone's favorite Netflix film released that year, which of course was Leave the World Behind. And interestingly enough, about that film, two of the executive producers were Michelle and Barack Obama, former president and first lady of the United States. And I haven't even mentioned any of the television series or international films that were released across the globe that depicted some sort of global catastrophe. Now, I might have just mentioned something that you were not aware of, that the film Leave the World Behind had Michelle and Barack Obama as two of its executive producers. But why is this? Well, if you are a full fledged conspiracy theorist, you would already know that they are just trying to warn us about what is going to happen in our country, which of course is a global shutdown due to some sort of cyber attack or an attack on our ability to use Wi Fi or our electronics, so on and so forth. In that film, there was that scene, of course, that everyone remembers where all of the Tesla cars were going into autopilot and running into one another. Now, that I can guarantee you may or may not happen in the near future. Now, what I found that was really interesting is that because I watched the film Leave the World Behind, I was immediately given suggestions on films that I might enjoy in this upcoming year. Two of those films are Civil War and ISS. The film Civil War seems very interesting because it depicts two governmental factions fighting for control over the United States. We essentially have a dictatorship and we also have a group of partisan militias fighting for control over the country. And then we also have this media group that is following both sides of the factions during this civil war. And if that doesn't pique your interest, we also have the film ISS, which has a very interesting premise in that we have a group of astronauts from America and we also have a group of cosmonauts from Russia living on the International Space Station. Now, while they're on the International Space Station, essentially a world war breaks out down on Earth. And they can see this because obviously they're in space, so they can see the nuclear explosions going on, so on and so forth. But what happens while they are up there is that they both receive a message from their government. The message is the same for both sides, and the message is to take control of the International Space Station by any means necessary. Now, those are just two of the multiple films that are set to be released this year that are depicting end of the world type situations. And additionally, there are other films such as the appropriately named The End and Homestead that are set to be released this year as well. So I go back to the original question of whether or not Hollywood is trying to warn us of the impending doom of either the end of the world or another world war type situation that will have catastrophic events globally. Now, one could easily argue that Hollywood is just trying to capitalize on the rising tensions that we have politically, both here in the States and globally. And Hollywood is just trying to strike while the iron is hot, as they like to say. This is obviously not the first time we've had multiple films come out over a span of a couple of years that depict a very similar type of situation where either catastrophic events are happening or doomsday type situations are going on. We can go back to films such as Geostorm and Greenland, which were released a few years back, but we could go back even farther to films like Armageddon, Dante's Peak, Volcano, and the list just continues on and on. So obviously, since these films are being made, there's a history there that states these films are financially successful. But why are we drawn to these types of stories as individuals? Well, if you're a psychologist, you might suggest that this is merely a way for us to process our fears of the unknown or of uncontrollable elements within the world. These films often reflect the current societal anxieties that we have. For example, the Cold War era produced numerous nuclear Holocaust films that simply mirrored the tensions that were happening at that time. However, if you were to make a case that Hollywood is indeed trying to warn us of the impending doom, you might point to the stories we've all heard about multiple billionaires building underground bunkers in preparation for the catastrophic events that are going to be happening here very soon. And interestingly enough, one of those films that I mentioned earlier that is set to be released this year is the film The End. Now, The End just so happens to be about a wealthy family that is living in an underground bunker 10 years after the end of the world. Now, the twist there, though, is that this family living in the bunker is somehow directly responsible for the end of the world. So, what's happening here? Is Hollywood aware of these underground bunkers that multiple billionaires are allegedly building right now? And they've just decided to make that a premise for one of their movies? Or is it just one big coincidence that the billionaires of the world are indeed building these underground bunkers, and Hollywood just so happens to have made a movie with a similar type of situation? We may never know. Additionally, make no mistake about it, there is a great amount of rising tension regarding the upcoming political election that is set to happen this year. However, if you've seen those videos of Alexa letting us know that there is no election happening this year, then you might be more apt to believe that Hollywood is indeed warning us of the impending apocalypse or upcoming global war. These scenarios lead some of us to believe that there may be more to these films than just pure entertainment. While I personally do not subscribe to any one conspiracy theory, I do find it quite fascinating to explore them, and I quite enjoy listening to those theories and their arguments. I think it's always a good idea to at least hear out those other ideas and theories, because even if they aren't true, there might be something that we can pull from them that might help us be better prepared for the future, or at least be better prepared for our lives as they currently are. So, is Hollywood just capitalizing on our fears, or are they trying to send us a message? The answer might not be straightforward, but it certainly is worth exploring. What do you think? Please let me know, and let's continue the discourse on the themes depicted in Hollywood and the real world anxieties that may be influencing them.